This video is going to be my reaction to the Ravens' 31-2 win over the Texans on Wednesday Night Football Christmas Day. In fact, the Ravens have now won their third game in a row, third victory in 11 days, which is just crazy to think about. Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, they were uncontrollable. They combined for 400 yards of offense as a duo. Actually, I think 402, 404. Ravens' defense was nearly perfect as well in shutting out a Texans offense that still has some talent there, but clearly is dealing with a ton of injuries on that side of the football. Houston generated 10 first downs tonight. They went 4 of 17 on third/fourth down conversions. A really, I think, great performance, probably the best of the year by Zach Orr and his defense. It may be dating back to Week 4 win at home against the Bills, but the fact that this one occurred, it's more remarkable that this happened 4 days after our win over the Steelers, a home win. And then they lost in Kansas City today, which is a great pairing outcome, if you will, having to play on 4 days rest. It's also not lost on me that the 4 teams playing today on Christmas are all AFC contenders. And the day that the schedule's made up, at least they're all considered to be AFC contenders, suiting up this late in the regular season with so little rest. But the Ravens went down to Houston and made it look relatively easy, jumped out to a 10-0 lead in the first quarter, riding Derrick Henry's hot hand. He was on fire early on in the game. He finished 27 carries, 147 yards, and the touchdown. Really unique situation here. How many? I accounted for this data after the game because just sitting there watching the third and fourth quarter, there wasn't much going on. How many running backs have ever rushed for over 300 yards in a 4-day stretch? Meaning 2 consecutive games dating back to Saturday's win against Pittsburgh. Henry has 51 carries for 309 yards. That's all in the last 96 hours or so. I know the NFL record guys have done it, have exceeded or gotten close to it. I'm talking about the cumulative effect of 51 carries over a 96-hour period. I think both games started in the 4:30 p.m. range as well. I would just think that that's not been done before from that type of impact over 120 minutes. I don't know about you. I was hoping that we got him off the field early because I just want to see him fresh. It's been revealed that when we focus on him, when we get him involved to the extent that we did tonight, he's one of a kind. So then what do you say about Lamar? I mean, he's not one of a kind. He's one of a sport, one of a history maybe. He only threw the ball 15 times tonight, but he made 3 plays here again that I just don't know who else could produce the combination of these 3 singular plays that he made. I'm fine. I'm comfortable if people want to mention Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, whoever. I think the list really stops there. The 67-yard completion to Mark Andrews on a somewhat crazy scramble late in the second quarter. Then the touchdown to Likely 3 snaps later. That was insane. There's no, I don't even know what word to use to describe it. Superhuman, alien, pure insanity. I don't know. You tell me what word you use to describe it. I'm talking about it's a play-action boot concept to Likely late in the second quarter. He's already flipped it out to Andrews for 67 yards. And Likely's out into the flats, and you have just an absolute apex predator of a D-end in Danielle Hunter ends up in Lamar's face, trying to front him up near the sideline. Lamar, moves to the sideline, stops, accelerates back to the sideline, retraces back in towards the bottom of the numbers, doesn't really get that far, and then retraces back again to the sideline, maybe 3 times. Hell, I don't know. All I do know is he hits Likely for a 9-yard touchdown to make it 17-2. I don't know about you, but when I saw him throwing the ball at this point, my trust level in him, I felt like I knew it was a touchdown. And knew is a word that maybe I can't really say, but I had the feeling, if he's throwing it, it's a touchdown. Because if not, he'll just throw it out of bounds. At that point, 17-2, even though it's second quarter, for me mentally, I knew that from a competition standpoint, the game was over. First of all, let me know what it reminded you of in terms of that play by Lamar. I guess the cumulative effect of those 2 plays, but specifically the one with Danielle Hunter, who's about as good as it gets at defensive end. I think he's got 12 sacks this year, 99.5 for his career. He's a ridiculous football player. Basketball guys are going to get this analogy. I apologize if this divides the audience, but some guys get the basketball in their hands and they go straight to the hoop. That's the way I was raised. That's the way we played in the area I grew up in. You got the ball, you went to the basket. And if you got stopped, you kicked it out, and the next guy tried to do the same thing. Most of us in my area, we weren't shooters. We were drivers. No wasted movement, just pure acceleration, try to take somebody off the dribble. Lamar has that, all right? Look at his 48-yard touchdown in the third quarter. But this one, the play against Hunter, the staccato nature of it, the start-stop, and then the slight fade on the touchdown to Likely. I think he's kind of drifting back a little bit when he does so. And he gets hit, I believe, after the throw. It reminded me of a point guard who dribbles too much, but who occasionally like crosses you over 3 times in one move just to show you that he can. Meaning, he could have went to the basket after the second crossover, but one more was just too tempting not to add on. Maybe made you fall down or not. The fact that Lamar did that to Danielle Hunter, an absolute stud. Basically, he went and one on Houston on that play. In Hunter's hometown, no less, in case you don't know, it really, I thought, finished off the Texans, really took their heart on a day when their offense just couldn't get going at all. And the crazy thing is Lamar wasn't done. You have the aforementioned 48-yard touchdown run on a diamond read concept in the third quarter. He raced off the right side behind Likely. Surprise, surprise. It's always behind Likely on the dual read concepts. 24-2 at that point. 13 minutes left in the third quarter. In the Discord, the Ravens Discord that's a part of my Patreon, I was calling for us like, look, if we get a stop and another score at the point that it's 24-2, let's get Henry off the field. We're already without Justice Hill. He's such an asset. He increases our ceiling by at least 2 levels, in my opinion. I'm talking about Derrick Henry. And at this point, Monken's integrated him into so many formations and so many play concepts. We have balance. We clearly have balance now. But back to the diamond read. Lamar keeps it. I think it's 22 personnel. Look, it's 2 Ricard sides. Both times we ran it tonight, it's 2 Ricard side. So it's not like it's not predictable when you see us line up, whether it's right or left. But on this one, the touchdown, Lamar keeps it. Likely's reading it as well. Like, don't listen to anyone who says Likely isn't reading it. Greg Olsen didn't get it either on the broadcast. Oh, Likely's going to loop around and go get this guy. Yeah, he does block that guy. It's because he's reading the outside linebacker just like Lamar is. If the outside linebacker runs upfield like an untrained defensive end, Likely's not going to run around and cross his face. He's going to go underneath because it's going to be a give to Henry, and he's going to try to block somebody on the backside. There's really just not too many option people out there. For me, I have it confirmed months ago. The best option guy that I've ever been around that I have access to, confirmed for me, it's a dual read. Call it whatever you want. Bluff. I don't care. It's a dual read concept. Likely and Lamar are both reading and reacting to Will Anderson, who's just a great player. He's got tremendous talent, but he was really unprepared for that formation and the play threat that flows from it. I think the Ravens have a couple unstoppable plays, depending on the situation, when and where they run it. In this case, this is one of them, so long as Lamar's playing quarterback. He hits a gear on this play. The ball is snapped from the 48, obviously. He hits a gear around the 43, the 42, something like that. Maybe it's the 44. And he goes from 4th to 5th immediately. It's like some of you have probably never driven a stick shift car, manual shift. At this point, they're very rarely seen. But it's almost like he skipped a gear, which you can do in a stick shift car. And he got into 5th without hitting 4th at all. It was over. Again, just like the touchdown to Likely. For me, once I saw him hit that gear, even on the broadcast view, we can't see downfield. I thought to myself, if he's hitting that gear, if he's going full speed, he knows what's in front of him. Nothing. And maybe it's also due to the fact I believe in what he's capable of. But when I saw him hit that gear, I said, this is it. I don't know who makes those 3 plays. Do you think Mahomes makes all 3 of those plays? I don't think he makes the 48-yard run. The other 2, maybe. Josh Allen, I don't think he makes the 48-yard run. I don't think he has that kind of acceleration, but I could be wrong. He's fully capable. I just think at this point in time, we've got a guy who made all 3 of those plays, not just in the same game, but in the same, 6-minute sequence? I guess separated by about 36 minutes because Beyonce's halftime show went on so long. Moving over to the defensive side for a moment, Kyle Hamilton had the interception, obviously, in the third quarter. I thought Stroud misfired on at least 3 plays in the first half. Maybe this is a misfire as well. I'm not sure. You can criticize Bobby Slowick all you want, and we've got a hardcore Texans fan in our Ravens Discord. They've got offensive line deficiencies. They're missing a lot of talent. But Stroud left plays on the field today, if you ask me. He looked a little rattled by our defense at times, really from the first possession on. It's okay to be critical of of season-long trends or patterns. Talking about their offensive coordinator, their offensive staff. Those things exist, and their use of personnel. But Stroud missed some throws today, and I say that as someone who's rooted for him. I say that as someone who liked him at Ohio State and watched him compete against Georgia in the college football playoff. Borderline heroically, thought he played well enough to win that night against pretty much any team. Unfortunately, it didn't occur. I think their offensive staff needs some reworking. If you can't get someone like Dameon Pierce involved at all, that's just unreal to me. In any case, I thought the Ravens' defense, for the most part tonight, must have closed off Stroud's first read, his primary look, because particularly Nico Collins. Early in the game, I thought 6-8 plays in the first half, Stroud was looking somewhere immediately after the snap, and his head, his face mask moved on quickly to the next part of the progression. To me, I thought that means we took it away. Whatever he was looking at, we must have been really prepared defensively to hold them to 58 yards rushing overall, only 10 first downs, and make Stroud extremely inefficient. I know, like I said, offensive line issues for them. They're missing some really good, talented wide receivers, Tank Dell, as well as Stephon Diggs. We held Nico Collins down. Other than that first slant that Nate Wiggins gave up to him early, they shut him off. Except for there was also a designed wheel out of the slot. I couldn't believe we didn't know this was coming. Nico Collins, and any number one wide receiver that they put as the number 2 or number 3 in trips, they're doing that for a reason, trying to get that guy an advantage. And there was also a pick play there. I think it was third quarter. In any case, other guys on defense that played really well besides Kyle Hamilton. Van Noy had an early sack on a stunt. I think it was an inside move. To me, that move is now patented for him off the left side against the right guard, right tackle. He juts to the inside gap, closes space, quickly against Stroud, gets the sack. Oweh was a problem against their right tackle. I think their right tackle is the rookie from Notre Dame, Blake Fisher, I believe. He was a player that I liked in the draft. Maybe it was 2 years ago, but I believe it was this season. Oweh had a sack, 2 quarterback hits. Matabike grabbed Stroud on a really impressive shoestring sack, actually. He had 3 quarterback hits. Chris Board gets a sack off the edge as an inside linebacker. I would like to see that more often. So many times we're in that mug look where the 2 inside linebackers are threatening the A-gap blitz. I kind of like it where we're threatening an A-gap blitz and threatening an edge blitz, or maybe only threatening one of those 2. Board was free off the edge. Roquan, I think, also got credited for a sack. I believe we had a total of 5. The stats are flowing through here so you can see it. I think Roquan's sack was more so Stroud trying to step up in the pocket. I could be wrong there. Stroud finished 17 of 31 for 185. I got some real interesting numbers about the trends of our defense later on that I'll read out to you. But he also threw the 1 interception. Check this out. In the 3 games that Stroud has played against the Ravens, and I really don't like necessarily focusing or detailing on this because, like I said, I like him. I root for him. I like his attitude and the way he talks about the game and his passion for the other guys on his team. But I have to include this here. In the 3 games against the Ravens, 2 last year, and then this game tonight, Christmas Day, he's 64 of 108 passing for 59% completion percentage. No TDs, 2 interceptions. Only 602 yards in those 3 games. And the real, I think, revealing stat is 5.57 yards per attempt. That's an extremely low number for him. If you don't know, he averaged 8.3 or maybe 8.2 yards per attempt as a rookie in 2023. They've got a lot. I know they've clinched a playoff berth. They might need an offensive reset, depending on how harsh Texans fans or front office, I should say, is in terms of their health, the losses of Diggs, Dell, and look, Nico Collins missed a significant amount of time earlier in the season. I think they're better than they showed tonight. That's my opinion. If everyone is healthy, I look at that as a dangerous team. They're far from it at this point. Health is a huge factor right now at the end of the regular season and the playoffs. For these teams playing 3 games in 11 days, health is the biggest factor, really. Baltimore sitting now at 11-5, winners of 3 in a row, and 6 of 8. That's all since falling to 5-3 after the loss to the Browns on the road in Cleveland in Week 8. The offense has now posted 400 yards of total offense in 3 straight games. And at this point, we need the win, clearly, against Cleveland to finish the regular season. We've got to atone for we appear ready to atone for our inability to generate consistent run game against Cleveland in that loss basically 2 months ago. I think Todd Monken knows how to rely on Derrick Henry at times now. He's definitely done so lately, right? And overall, the run game is just surging. By my math, if I've done it right, since the Week 11 loss to the Steelers, the Ravens have generated 1,019 rushing yards. And the lowest output during that stretch is 166 against the Eagles in a home loss. If I did my calculations right, we're averaging 203 yards on the ground since the road loss in Pittsburgh in Week 11. They've exceeded 200 yards 3 times in that stretch against the Chargers, against the Steelers 4 days ago, and then tonight, the Texans, who, look, the Texans have a defensive-minded head coach in DeMeco Ryans. I've seen them play before, and I like their defense. Now, I think they've got some health issues over there as well. But regardless, there's just too many threats for them to deal with, at least tonight. Henry really dominated the first 2 possessions, I think. Although Lamar on the first possession busted out of the pocket for a 25-yard scramble. And then he also had a 27-yard pass to Zay Flowers on a play-action dig route. Henry kind of punched it in on a power run concept, and it was quickly 7-0. It almost seemed too quick and too easy. In our Discord, we were like, it can't be this easy the whole game. And it wasn't. Offensively, it was not. The Texans defense tightened up some, although we did make it 10-0 on our second possession. If you recall, Van Noy had a sack to force the Texans to punt on their first drive, and then Henry went to work again. He gets 20 yards on wham trap. I was glad to see that play return. And then 8 yards, and then 12 yards. We did kind of lose momentum, I think, on 2 possessions when Henry was dominant the first 3 or 4 plays and then had to go off. I think we missed Justice Hill. He has an impact. He can come in. He's more than serviceable in the run and the pass game. I think we need him back to be at our full potential. But on that second possession, fortunately, Tucker drills a 52-yarder after Lamar's third down pass to Flowers. I believe left side, like a speed out, goes incomplete. Stroud couldn't get anything done at all over the first 2 possessions. But the big one, the first 4 possessions, really, but the big one was a 3rd and 2 early in the second quarter. Houston is near midfield. I think they're at like the negative 46, negative 47. And this is the moment that told me our defense was really prepared. They went to an RPO, so the running back is on a wide path left to right for Stroud for the offense. And we must have forced a keep read for Stroud because he did, in fact, keep it, and he looked for the slant backside. I don't know who the corner was. It looked like they were covering Collins. They took away the inside leverage, took away the slant, basically, and so Stroud had to hesitate. As soon as that first read was done, he looked a little rattled. Oweh chased him down for the sack. I believe it's Oweh's 9th sack of the year. And we get the ball back with 10-15 left in the second quarter. To that point, here's Houston's possessions. 6 plays, 11 yards, punt. 4 plays, 14 yards, punt. 5 plays, 9 yards, another punt. We did give them, however, a semblance of hope when Henry tried to bounce the off-tackle run from inside our own 5-yard line, and Kamari Lassiter, the rookie from Georgia, tackled him in the end zone for a safety to close to 10-2. And in fact, Houston's offense reached our, I think, 3-yard line. After the free kick, 4 minutes later, they're down on our 3 with a second and goal from the 3. I thought, and it was courtesy of, we have to be honest, at least to me. You may have seen it differently. I thought it was a really soft defensive pass interference call on Humphrey. It was a 4th and 3. Stroud makes a throw that may be considered uncatchable. I don't know. It was definitely high. And it seemed like Woods, to me, extended his right arm more into Marlon to kind of push off rather than Marlon initiating contact. But maybe there was contact before the broadcast replay. Let me know if you saw it differently. That was a huge moment because it essentially presented them an opportunity to tie the game. I even typed in our Discord like, hey, it's going to be 10-10 or 10-8 at best. Huge moment, 2nd and goal from the 3. Tackle for loss by Roquan and Marlon on a run by Mixon. Mixon he got shut down. He looked incredibly frustrated tonight. The 2 times the broadcast angle showed him on the sidelines, so much so that they didn't show him again. So read into that whatever you want. Then the 3rd and goal, it was a pass play to John Mechie against Humphrey, Alabama versus Alabama, and brilliant timing by Marlon, who had just been called for a DPI, but he's not willing to cede an inch. That's what I've enjoyed about his play so far this year. He's the only guy that was physical from day one, including Kyle Hamilton in terms of making contact with receivers, refusing to give ground. And in this case, he knocks the ball away with his right hand. On the very next snap, it looked like we adjusted, maybe finally, to teams putting their best receiver to their left or right against Brandon Stevens. Collins is over there, lined up over Brandon Stevens, and Hamilton is the safety. I thought I saw Hamilton widen up by like 3 or 4 yards pre-snap. Stroud saw it. He looked over there and then went immediately to the front side. It was that what I call a one-man screen concept. And so you have two great plays, Marlon and Roquan on a tackle for loss, then Marlon with the PD against Mechie. And here it's a one-man screen to Mixon out in, I believe the tight end Schultz is out in front of him to the wide side of the field, excuse me. Marlon makes first contact. Mixon breaks through it, and then Ardarius just has such commitment and confidence. A low kind of crack on Mixon with like around the hip or the quad, kind of folded him up a little bit, and then Tre'Davious White was there to finish him off. It was a great moment. Look, any time there's a goal line stand, if you're on the sideline, it offers a burst to the team. This one, after what was, in my opinion, a questionable DPI on Humphrey that could have been a stop, probably felt amazing. I know it was. Did you see Zach Orr jump up and celebrate with Ardarius Washington when Ardarius came over, and instead Orr missed and fell and hit the ground, kind of like a failed stage dive at a concert. If you haven't seen it, it's worth searching up to check it out. That was huge because it highlighted, first of all, how great Marlon Humphrey is playing everywhere, and then also Ardarius Washington. It took 3 guys to get the job done on that play. First Humphrey, then Ardarius, and Tre'Davious White. All 3 guys are in different parts of their career, different places in their time with the Ravens. Just really cool the nature of those 3 guys being involved to finish off that tackle. So Lamar's first highlight reel of this game, highlight reel play happened a couple of snaps later. We're backed up to our 1, if you remember, and it's only 10-2. Henry for 7 yards. Then Bateman's only catch of the night, I think, was for 12. Over the middle. Lamar also hits Flowers for a big gain, only to see that play called back. Ineligible man downfield on Ronnie Stanley, clearly. I mean, we saw the replays like 5 yards downfield. Then on a 2nd and 10, Henry looked a little fatigued to me on this snap. This is the completion to Andrews. Henry misses a block on the nickel defender. It's off the left edge. And at the same time, Will Anderson's getting chipped by Andrews, who's helping Rosengarten out. And Anderson has such great contact balance. He kind of gets by Andrews, who is, taught or told to release at a certain point. It looks like he KOs Rosengarten. It's the most unusual reaction by Rosengarten. It's a very unique, anomalous play, the way that he reacted. It makes Will Anderson look like Superman because he just knocks Rosengarten off immediately. And the crazy thing is, Anderson, who just made a great move, Lamar doesn't juke him. He jukes the nickel. Anderson actually falls over Henry, who was laying on the ground because he lost so poorly in pass pro. It just shows how unpredictable football can be sometimes. Anderson just whips Rosengarten, who played extremely well, I think, for most of the game, except for dealing with Will Anderson. And last week, dealing with TJ Watt. Rosengarten, I thought was solid. Anderson wins and then falls over a guy who lost on the other side, which allows Lamar time to, well, it doesn't allow. Lamar juked the nickel and then slides out of there, lofts a perfect throw to Andrews over man. And I thought Andrews just ran out of gas. Ran out of gas, maybe just didn't have enough gas. He looked like a guy who didn't plan on driving for an hour, but he got a text, if you know what I'm talking about. So he said, I got to go and see if I can make it in time. But the crazy thing is that wasn't the most unbelievable play by Lamar on that sequence. The stop, juke, freeze, dance, retrace of Hunter, and then finding Likely for a 9-yard touchdown. It's 17-2 at that point. I don't know. I hardly have time to watch post-game comments by coaches or players for the Ravens, let alone the Texans. But Texans fan in our Discord said Hunter indicated that his defensive coaches have to game plan better after he got basically posterized and won by Lamar. There's just too many weapons for this team to not succeed offensively, and that's what makes it so frustrating when Monken doesn't put us in position. Lamar, Henry, Andrews, Flowers, Bateman. I mean, look Likely. is a guy who has 5 touchdowns this year and a 73%, I think maybe 6 touchdowns actually, and a 73% catch percentage. This touchdown to him isn't even Lamar's most impressive touchdown to likely from the right sideline this season. Maybe not even this month. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but you get the idea. The reality is we have so many weapons that a player like Likely is capable of 8 or 10 touchdowns in a season if given a ton of opportunities. There's just only one football to go around. Even at the first half standpoint, 17-2, you had a feeling that the game was over because of how our defense was playing and the offense. We had 261 yards of offense in the first half. Henry had 94 yards on 15 carries. Just a wide variety of run concepts. Trap, 2 different versions of trap. Inside zone, outside zone, power. All of those things pushed us out to a 10-0 lead and then 17-2. Even though Lamar was only 6 of 11 passing and he had been pressured often, he had escaped at least 3 times. I think the Texans finished with 1 sack, probably against a normal quarterback, a normal NFL quarterback. It probably will be 3 or 4 sacks tonight, somewhere in that area. Just the generational plays at the end of the second quarter. Again, I don't know who makes those plays back-to-back other than maybe Mahomes or Josh Allen. The Texans' offense was clearly on the other end of the spectrum in the first half and throughout the entirety of the game. Nothing from Joe Mixon in the first half. 7 carries, 16 yards. Stroud was hit by Owe, Van Noy, Matabike multiple times. They had 125 yards of offense in the first half and only 7 first downs. They got 3 first downs in the second half. Stroud was 11 of 20 passing. It really didn't get much better in the second half. I thought that the Ravens, the way they opened the third quarter, looked like a team with killer instinct, which we haven't had always. This very, very reminiscent of our late season game against the 49ers last year. I know it's a different type of team. The 49ers were an obvious Super Bowl threat contender at that time last year, and of course they did, in fact, make the Super Bowl. The Texans' health, I think, separates them from that comparison, but to go on the road and win in the dominating fashion that we did, this opening portion of the third quarter really reminds me of that game in San Francisco on Christmas Day last year. Kyle Hamilton gets the interception on a throw by Stroud, and then Henry gets 12 yards on an option play where the DN runs right at Lamar. The following play was the diamond formation, and Lamar keeps it for 48 yards, makes it 24-2, along with the pass to Andrews and the one to Likely. I don't know how someone can watch that and say that he's not the MVP. I don't get into those conversations a whole lot because, frankly, I just don't care. I want to see him raise a Super Bowl trophy. And knowing Lamar, he would be classy. I don't see him being the type to take shots at people who were critical of him, people who thought he shouldn't play quarterback. He seems to be the type of classy person who would keep it positive and keep it focused on the Ravens, his team, and his faith. The heights that this offense can get to is a little disgusting. Were a defense to sell out to stop the run, they'd have to do it strategically. You can't do that on every single snap, every single 1st and 10 because of Henry's vision, Lamar's ability to make people miss if he keeps it, his throwing ability. Oh, by the way, in case you don't know, he's got 39 passing touchdowns now, almost 4,000 yards passing. Like I said, I really don't care about MVP. Should they give it to him? I mean, if I'm picking and I get to pick first and you get the next 2, I'm taking him. But what we're doing right now with him and Henry, and then supplementing or complementing that with our receivers and our tight ends, it reminds me of a dynamic that I've seen before, and some of you may not like it because of the way that opposing teams' fans have talked about Lamar in the past. So, and the only add-on I'll put to this before I throw the analogy out here is, it's a very large add-on, is that you're talking about a guy who's got 39 passing touchdowns. He's got a career high, 67.9 completion percentage. His touchdown percentage, career high. His yards per attempt, career high. His adjusted yards per attempt, career high. Oh, by the way, those last 3, in fact, I think are leading the league. He also, the same player, has, I think, now over 850 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns on the ground. He could clearly have 1,000 yards rushing at this point, were we to not be in the lead so many times in the second half, and or Lamar is skew running in favor of throwing the football to other guys, getting other players involved. So keep all that in mind when I make this analogy. Some of you will get it, some of you won't. It reminds me of when I have seen a great wing T team. And I recognize that I'm splitting or dividing the audience once again because some people don't have familiarity with it. So forgive me for that. In the wing T, the fullback gets the majority of the carries. And they run the ball a lot. Usually it's between 78 and 82% of the time, somewhere in that range for a true wing T under center team. Henry, in this analogy, is the fullback that gets the ball 25 times for 130, 140, 2 short touchdown runs usually, just bludgeons you, punishes you, forces you to account for that. Wing T coaches, the great ones, say, if we can run the fullback off tackle, we can beat anybody. And the other element of the offense is that you usually have a truly devastating athlete at halfback. The really great wing T teams do. That guy runs buck sweep, he runs power, he runs halfback pitch, he runs halfback power week, which is a cool-ass play that you rarely see, and usually gets 8 carries for 155 and 2 touchdowns. Because like I said, the fullback softens the defense up and forces you to account for space, gaps, and areas that then allows the offensive staff or offensive coordinator to use his halfback to exploit that. Lamar, in this example, clearly is the halfback, and I recognize that Ravens fans won't like that, but it fits for me because he doesn't have to throw the ball 32 times for us to win. He doesn't have to carry the ball 12, 14, 15 times for us to win tough games against tough opponents. Can he do those things on a given possession? Yes. Will he have to switch gears into something like that? Maybe against the Chiefs on the road, against the Bills on the road? Perhaps. Henry now has 1,783 yards rushing in 16 games. His second highest output ever in the NFL. He's averaging 6 yards per carry. To me, he was the best free agent signing back then, and he still is. I recognize that some people would take Saquon Barkley. I understand that. He's a Hall of Fame talent too. I mean, it's neither here nor there. But Henry, for me, he's an offense unto himself when we need him to be. And the opposing teams are going to look at our rushing trends, our patterns in the last 5-6 weeks, and they're going to have to try to take that away. And so I think that allows Lamar to be high efficiency. I recognize the wing T comparison may trigger some Ravens fans who've heard Bengals fans, Browns fans, Steelers fans say insulting things. I do not care about what they say. I never did. I recognize you may. It's an apt comparison because Henry allows Lamar to have games like this. He was 10 of 15 passing for 2 touchdowns. He had 4 carries for 87 yards. I recognize one of those carries was a scramble, so not a designed run. To my math, Lamar had 19 throws/runs that generated 255 yards. If I did it correctly, it's an average of 13 yards per pass/run tonight for Lamar. I know that's not a real stat, but they make up stats now for other quarterbacks, combined total TDs, which I've never heard before until the last couple of weeks, so maybe this should be a new stat too. I think the key point is that the offense can change gears, and they probably will be forced to at some point. We've operated with this Henry-centric game plan the last 2 weeks. Eventually, at some point in January or February, 1 or 2 defensive coordinators in a row is going to look at it and say, I've got to limit Derrick Henry because this is just too easy for them. They can do this all day long. And that, to me, possibly opens them up to bigger shots down the field or even intermediate throws that could create a ton of yards after the catch. This is going to be a fun game to rewatch. I intend to do so tonight after this video reaction premieres. I didn't cover Zach Orr's defense long enough. Forgive me that this reaction video is going on so long, but I'll have to check it out in film study aspect starting tomorrow. But look, this defense has clearly turned a corner. There's no other way to describe it. I held on to the stat till the end. I didn't want to give this out to everyone. I wanted the hardcore people to gather it. So here it is. Since the 35-34 win over the Bengals in Week 10, here's what Zach Orr's defense has done from a pass defense perspective. Reflect on the beginning of the season and get ready for this. In 6 games, we're of course 4-2 during that time. The defense has allowed 96 points, including tonight's game as a shutout. So that's an average of 16 points allowed per game. Remarkable. But there's been incredible improvement, no matter who they've played, in the passing yards allowed per game. They haven't allowed a quarterback to throw for over 200 yards since Week 10. That was Burrow throwing for 421 in our 35-34 win in Week 10 at home. Here's the results since then. Feel free to double-check them for me and let me know if I've done something wrong here. Wilson throws for 181, and the Steelers beat us 18-16 in Pittsburgh in Week 11. The next week we go to L.A. We beat Justin Herbert and the Chargers. He throws for 202. Week 13 at home, Jalen Hurts only threw the ball 19 times, of course. 112 yards. They beat us 24-19. I'd love to see him again because that means we play him in the Super Bowl. We got a bye. For me, here's the reason why I'm giving you these stats. It's important to note that this trend of decreased passing yards allowed did not start with the bye. That's lazy. It started before the bye. Next week after the bye, road win against the Giants. Whoever they had playing quarterback threw for 181 combined. This past Saturday, at home against the Steelers, the rematch, Wilson puts up 198. We pull away to win 34-17 on Marlon's pick six in the fourth quarter. Tonight, C.J. Stroud, probably the best quarterback in that stretch to some. He's 17 of 31 for 177 yards. My total, if I did my math right, hopefully I didn't miss a game, in those 6 games is we've allowed 1,059 passing yards. That's an average of 176.5 passing yards per game. I never would have guessed that. Let me know if you would have predicted something like that. I would not. We didn't get here on the path that we planned, certainly, that us Ravens fans hoped for. We had hoped we'd be like 13-3. Sitting out guys in the last week with the number 1 seed or maybe the number 2 seed secured. But after this 4-day stretch, for me, with guys like Henry, Lamar, and now the defense on board, we might be in exactly the place we need to be. We got one more divisional round game coming up against the Browns. We don't get to rest people. Perhaps that's a blessing in disguise. With 10 days, we don't get to rest people in that game, I should say, but we'll get plenty of rest with 10 days in between this win over the Texans and that home game against Cleveland. I wouldn't want to face this team right now if we play turnover-free football on offense and we take the pressure off Lamar, whether that's a Henry-centric game plan, whether that is creating turnovers on defense to give us short fields and easy touchdown drives. But stingy defense against the pass, to me, is got to be one of the things that we can continue to get done. That will be a higher standard or higher execution level, that's required when we face Josh Allen, when we face the Steelers probably a third time, and certainly when we face Patrick Mahomes. You're welcome to let me know what you think of those thoughts about the persistent success of the pass defense in the past 6 weeks. Those are real numbers if I did all my math right. A couple add-ons here at the end. Texans only ran for 58 yards overall. It's the second time I've seen them this year against the Lions. The Lions defense did the same thing to them in the second half. Jared Goff threw 5 picks that night, and they were still able to get a win in Texas by shutting down the run game, particularly in the second half, limiting C.J. Stroud. Another thing I want to mention, and this is a continued complaint from me, I figured people wouldn't want to hear it, so I held it till the end. I have to give credit to, I think it's Mina Kimes. If I mispronounce her name, I apologize. I don't watch TV at all. I just don't have time to. It's not a choice. I literally don't have time. She actually gave some real football analysis at halftime, and to me it stuck out like a sore thumb. They should put someone like that in the booth during the game with a former player. That's, it's almost always an offensive player, like a quarterback, Tom Brady, Tony Romo, or an offensive player, Greg Olsen. She quoted from memory, recognized some patterns about the Texans offense and talked about them at the half. It was real football talk for me. Like, I would like to hear someone talk about what Lamar's reading, what Likely's reading on the diamond read option concept. Greg Olsen did actually talk about it. He misrepresented a portion of it, in my opinion. I enjoyed hearing her talk about the Texans offense and how those patterns were continuing and showing up in the first half. It seemed to me like actual football discussion, whereas the offensive guys in the booth that are former players generally are focused on quarterbacks. Maybe they'll vaguely go into a run concept, but we never hear about personnel groups. Hardly ever hear about formations. They don't give us enough information. If you ask me, I'd like to see a defensive player or someone like her with her experience as a professional analyst, at least in my observation from what I've seen, besides just a career-long media broadcast person in the booth and an former offensive player, quarterback, tight end, what have you. I would like to call for or see some depth and width of experience. And to further illustrate the point, look at her inclusion there, what she said, talking about the patterns of the Texans offense, the things they've struggled with, and what they were struggling with at that time. And then they immediately go to RG3, who offers literally nothing. A former offensive player, yeah, he's rooting for the Ravens, so I understand what he's talking about. But to me, you're looking at somebody who was prepared for the moment, Mina Kimes, and offering information, and somebody on the other end, at least one former offensive player, RG3, if not two, including Greg Olsen, that really had done almost zero preparation, in my opinion. You guys are welcome to let me know what you think of those thoughts. Number one, number two, of the Ravens 31-2 win over the Texans, and how I tried to summarize it in a video that obviously at this point went on too long. Appreciate you guys' time.